The space around New Haven looked peaceful from a distance. The small farming world spun slowly on its axis, its green continents and blue oceans making it look like a jewel floating in the darkness. 48,000 humans lived there, growing food and raising families far from the crowded worlds of the inner systems. But peace was about to end. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet through the main viewing screen. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the world below. Behind him, the bridge crew of his command ship worked quietly at their stations. Through the thick windows, he could see the lights of other ships stretching into the distance. 200 Zephyrian warships hung in space like sleeping giants. The Admiral's scaled hands gripped the rail in front of him. This should be simple. Every world they had conquered in the past 3 years had fallen the same way. First came the ultimatum, then came the negotiations, finally came the surrender. The pattern never changed. "Status report," he commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. Sub-Admiral Velthar approached from the communications station. Her blue skin was marked with the scars of many battles. "The ultimatum was sent to the human colony 6 hours ago, Admiral. We have received their response." "And?" Kethvar turned to face his second-in-command. "They declined our offer to surrender." The Admiral's mandibles clicked together in annoyance. "Declined? What exactly did they say?" Velthar consulted her datapad. The message was brief. Quote, "Negative. We decline your offer." End quote. "That's all?" "Yes, Admiral. No requests for negotiation, no threats, no attempts to contact their government for help." Kethvar walked to the tactical display in the center of the bridge. The holographic image showed New Haven surrounded by red dots representing his fleet. The planet itself showed no military installations, no orbital defense platforms, no hidden weapon systems. Their intelligence had been correct. This was a farming world with no defenses. "Perhaps they don't understand the situation," suggested Commander Hickstel from the weapons station. 48,000 civilians against 200 warships. Maybe they need time to think. Or maybe they're buying time while help arrives, Velthar added. "Have our long-range sensors detected any human military vessels approaching?" The sensor officer, Lieutenant Karvesh, checked his instruments. "Negative, Sub-Admiral. No ships within 3 light years of this system. No energy signatures suggesting incoming vessels. No subspace communications requesting assistance." Admiral Kethvar studied the display more carefully. In his 40 years of military service, he had conquered 17 worlds. He understood how these situations worked. When faced with overwhelming force, civilized species followed predictable patterns. They evacuated their civilians, they called for help. They tried to negotiate, they prepared defenses. The humans were doing none of these things. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet." "Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed a human face. The being had pale skin and brown hair, with the small eyes typical of his species. He wore a simple blue uniform with no military decorations. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations ship Defiant. I'm speaking for the colony of New Haven." Admiral Kethvar stepped forward. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. You have received our ultimatum. Do you wish to discuss terms of surrender?" The human's expression didn't change. "No, Admiral, we've made our position clear. We're not surrendering." "Captain Morrison, I have 200 warships. You have a farming colony with no defenses. Surely you can see that resistance is impossible." "I can see your ships, Admiral. Impressive formation." "Then you understand your situation." "I understand it perfectly." The human paused. "We're sending one ship to resolve this matter." The bridge fell silent. Admiral Kethvar blinked all 6 eyes rapidly. "Excuse me?" "One ship, the UNS Defiant, will be with you shortly." The transmission ended. The main screen returned to showing the peaceful planet below. Sub-Admiral Velthar was the first to speak. "Did he say one ship?" "That's what I heard," Admiral Kethvar replied slowly. Commander Hickstel laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "One ship? Against our entire fleet? These humans must be insane." "Or desperate," suggested Velthar. "Perhaps it's a suicide attack." A last gesture of defiance. Lieutenant Karvesh looked up from his sensor station. "Sir, I'm detecting a ship leaving the planet's surface. It's heading our way." On screen, the image changed to show a single vessel rising from New Haven's atmosphere. It was larger than a fighter but smaller than a battleship. The design was unfamiliar, with smooth lines and strange projections along its hull. "Analysis," ordered the admiral. "It appears to be a modified heavy cruiser," reported the tactical officer. "Length approximately 400 meters. Mass roughly 50,000 tons. Energy signature suggests standard fusion power plant. Weapon systems appear conventional. Crew complement? Estimated 40 to 50 beings based on ship size. Admiral." Kethavar stared at the approaching vessel. 50 humans against his fleet of 200 ships and 40,000 crew members. The odds were so ridiculous they weren't worth calculating. "Sir," said Velthar quietly, "this has to be a trick. Maybe they're buying time while help arrives. Or perhaps this ship carries some kind of super weapon." "Continue scanning," Kethavar ordered. "I want to know everything about that vessel." The minutes passed slowly as the human ship approached. Long-range sensors found no hidden weapons, no unusual energy signatures, no signs of advanced technology. It was exactly what it appeared, to be one small ship carrying a handful of humans. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "the human ship is requesting permission to dock with our flagship." "They want to board our ship?" "Yes, sir. Captain Morrison requests a face-to-face meeting." Admiral Kethavar considered this. In his experience, desperate enemies sometimes tried personal attacks when military options failed. But 50 humans against his entire crew? It would be suicide. "Grant permission," he decided, "but maintain full security protocols. I want to understand what these humans are thinking." As the human ship approached the massive Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethavar couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The humans weren't acting like any enemy he had faced before. They showed no fear, no desperation, no recognition of their impossible situation. Instead, they seemed almost confident. The thought sent a chill through the Admiral's scaled skin. In 40 years of conquest, he had learned to recognize many emotions in his enemies. Fear he understood. Anger he expected. Desperation he had seen countless times. But confidence? That was something new. And in his experience, confident enemies were the most dangerous kind. The UNS Defiant moved through space with steady purpose. On the bridge of the human ship, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the Zephyrian fleet grow larger on the main screen. The alien vessels looked like metal mountains, floating in the darkness, their hulls bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. "Distance to the flagship?" Morrison asked calmly. 2,000 kilometers and closing," replied Lieutenant Amy Walsh from the navigation station. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. "They've cleared a docking port for us on their port side." "Good. Lisa, how are those scans coming along?" Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her science station, her blonde hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She had been studying the alien ships for the past hour, her instruments recording every detail. "Almost finished, Captain. These Zephyrians really like their patterns." "What kind of patterns?" "Everything. Ship formations, shield frequencies, weapon signatures, communication protocols. They've standardized everything across their entire fleet." Lisa smiled slightly. "It's actually quite impressive from an organizational standpoint." Morrison nodded. "And from a tactical standpoint?" "Well, that's a different story entirely." Across the bridge, Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks worked at his station, making final adjustments to the ship's systems. His hands moved quickly over the controls, implementing modifications that had taken months to design. The Defiance engine readings fluctuated as he rerouted power through new pathways. "How much longer, Ryan?" asked Commander Nicole Torres from the weapons station. Her dark eyes focused on her displays, tracking the energy signatures of 200 alien warships. "Another 20 minutes, Ryan replied without looking up. "The power distribution network needs to be perfect for this to work." Meanwhile, aboard, The Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar paced his bridge like a caged animal. The human ship continued its approach, showing no signs of hostile intent. His tactical officers had been scanning the vessel for hours, finding nothing that explained. The human's confidence. "Sir," called Lieutenant Karvesh from sensors, "I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the human ship." "What kind of patterns?" "Their power grid is fluctuating in ways I've never seen before. It's like they're rerouting energy through their entire ship, but I can't determine why." Sub-Admiral Velthar joined the Admiral at the center of the bridge. "Could they be preparing some kind of weapon?" "Possibly, but our scans show nothing beyond standard armament. A few missile tubes, some beam weapons, point defense systems, nothing that could threaten even one of our ships, let alone the entire fleet." Admiral Kethavar studied the tactical display. The human ship was a tiny dot surrounded by the massive formation of his fleet. By every measure of military strength, this should be over before it began. But something felt wrong. "Admiral," interrupted the communications officer, "the human ship is broadcasting on all frequencies." "All frequencies?" "Yes, sir. Open transmissions. They're not even trying to encrypt their communications." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life with a clear human voice. It was a female, speaking in calm, measured tones. "This is Dr. Lisa Carter of the UNS Defiant, broadcasting to all Zephyrian vessels. We've completed our analysis of your fleet composition and tactical systems. The data is quite fascinating." Admiral Kethvar exchanged glances with his officers. "Are they sharing intelligence with us?" The human voice continued. "Your standardized approach to fleet organization shows remarkable efficiency. Ship class designations Alpha through Epsilon, each with identical power systems, shield generators, and weapon configurations. Networked communication systems allow for coordinated attacks and shared defensive protocols." "How do they know all this?" whispered Commander Hickstel. "Fleet formation follows classic Zephyrian doctrine," Dr. Carter's voice went on. "Command ships at center, heavy cruisers in outer ring, destroyers providing screening positions. Shield frequencies are harmonized to prevent interference between vessels." Sub-Admiral Velthar felt a chill run down her spine. "This information, it's completely accurate. They know our systems better than some of our own officers." "Your tactical doctrine appears to be based on overwhelming force and coordinated assault," the human continued. "Very effective against conventional enemies. However, there are some interesting vulnerabilities in this approach." Admiral Kethvar stepped forward. "What vulnerabilities? How could they possibly know?" The broadcast paused for a moment, then resumed. "We've been studying your conquest pattern for several months. 14 worlds in 3 years, all following identical procedures. Your consistency is your strength, but it's also your weakness." On the Defiance Bridge, Dr. Carter looked up from her station. "Should I tell them about the cascade failure potential?" Captain Morrison shook his head. "Not yet. Let them wonder." Chief Engineer Brooks announced, "Power grid modifications complete. All systems ready for Protocol 7. "What's Protocol 7? asked Amy Walsh. "Something we hope we'll never have to use again," Morrison replied quietly. "Nicole, are your calculations ready?" Commander Torres nodded, her hands moving over the weapons console. "Target acquisition complete. If Lisa's analysis is correct, we'll need exactly 12 minutes and 37 seconds. 12 minutes for what? Admiral Kethavar demanded. Though the humans couldn't hear him, the human broadcast resumed. "We're uploading detailed technical specifications to your computers now. Feel free to verify our analysis. You'll find our calculations are quite accurate." Data began flowing into the Zephyrian fleet's computer systems. Technical diagrams, power flow charts, structural analysis, and tactical assessments filled their screens. The information was incredibly detailed and completely correct. "How is this possible?" asked Lieutenant Karvesh. "This data would take months to compile." "Unless they had help," suggested Velthar. "Maybe they have spies in our fleet." "Admiral," Kethvar studied the incoming data with growing unease. The humans had identified weaknesses in their systems that his own engineers had never considered. Critical points where a small failure could cascade through the entire network. vulnerabilities that existed because of their standardized approach. "Sir," called the communications officer, "the human ship is requesting permission to board." "They still want to meet?" "Yes, Admiral. Captain Morrison, Dr. Carter, and their security chief request transport to our bridge." Admiral Kethvar considered this. 3 humans against his entire crew. Even if they were armed, what could 3 people do against thousands? But their confidence was troubling. They acted like they held all the advantages. "Grant permission," he decided. "But I want full security. Search them thoroughly. I want to know why they're so certain they can win." As the human representatives prepared to beam aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a mistake. Everything about this situation defied military logic. The humans should be terrified. They should be begging for mercy or trying to escape. Instead, they were giving him technical lectures and requesting meetings. On the Defiant, Major Danny Foster checked his equipment one final time. The security chief was a quiet man with steady hands and alert eyes. He had said almost nothing during the approach, but his presence made everyone feel safer. "Ready, Major?" asked Captain Morrison. Foster nodded once. "Ready, sir. Remember, we're not there to fight, we're there to educate." "Understood." Dr. Carter gathered her datapads and scientific instruments. "I've prepared a full presentation on their system vulnerabilities. This should be quite enlightening. For them." Morrison stood and straightened his uniform. "Let's go show them why humans only needed one ship." As the 3 humans prepared to transport to the alien flagship, Ryan Brooks made final adjustments to the Defiance systems. Commander Torres ran through her targeting calculations one more time. Lieutenant Walsh monitored the positions of all 200 enemy ships. Everything was ready. The humans had studied their enemy, understood their weaknesses, and prepared. Their solution. Now came the education phase. Admiral Kethvar was about to learn why confident enemies were the most dangerous kind of all. The transport beam faded, leaving 3 humans standing on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship. Captain Jake Morrison looked around the alien bridge with calm interest. The ceiling stretched high above them, designed for beings much taller than humans. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and the air smelled of metal and something sweet. Admiral Kethvar approached the humans, his 6 eyes studying them carefully. Up close, they looked even smaller than he had expected. The captain was average height for a human, with short brown hair and steady blue eyes. The female scientist carried several datapads and instruments. The 3rd human, obviously their security chief, stood slightly behind the others and said nothing. "Welcome aboard the Zarthek," Admiral Kethvar said, using the formal greeting of his people. "I am Admiral Kethvar, commander of the 3rd Fleet." "Thank you for having us," Morrison replied politely. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is Dr. Lisa Carter, our chief science officer, and Major Danny Foster, our security chief." The Zephyrian guards had searched the humans thoroughly before allowing them on the bridge. They carried no weapons, no explosives, no dangerous technology, just datapads, scientific instruments, and what appeared to be a small recording device. "Please sit." Admiral Kethvar gestured to chairs that had been brought for the humans. "I must admit, Captain Morrison, I am curious about your strategy. You have 1 ship against my fleet of 200. How do you plan to resolve this situation?" Morrison settled into his chair comfortably. "We plan to solve the problem, Admiral. That's what humans do. We identify problems and we solve them." "And we are the problem?" "Your invasion of our territory is the problem. You and your fleet are simply the tools being used to create that problem." Sub-Admiral Velthar leaned forward. "You speak as if you have already won. Do you not understand the situation you are in?" Dr. Carter looked up from her datapad. "Oh, we understand perfectly. You have 200 ships with a combined crew of approximately 40,000 beings. Total firepower equivalent to roughly 15,000 standard weapon units. Shield strength sufficient to withstand most conventional attacks. Then you... No resistance is useless, said Commander Hickstell. Actually, we know that resistance is unnecessary, Morrison replied. Dr. Carter, would you like to explain? Lisa Carter activated her datapad, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed a detailed diagram of a Zephyrian warship with various systems highlighted in different colors. "Your ships are engineering marvels," she began. "The level of standardization across your fleet is remarkable. Every vessel uses the same power distribution network, the same shield generators, the same communication protocols. This allows for perfect coordination," Admiral Kethvar said proudly. "Our ships work together as one unit." "Exactly, and that's your weakness." The bridge fell silent. Several Zephyrian officers exchanged glances. Admiral Kethvar's mandibles clicked nervously. "Explain," he demanded. Dr. Carter touched her datapad and the display changed. Now it showed the power flow through a Zephyrian ship, with critical junctions marked in red. "Your standardized systems create what we call cascade vulnerabilities. If you disrupt the power flow at specific points, the failure spreads through the entire network, ship to ship, system to system, until the entire fleet loses power." "Impossible," said the tactical officer. "Our systems have multiple redundancies." "Yes, but all your redundancies follow the same pattern. Same backup protocols, same fail-safe procedures, same emergency systems. You've eliminated random failures, but you've created the possibility of systematic failure." Captain Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Dr. Carter spent 3 months studying your conquest of the Taylor system, your fleet operations at the Henix colonies, your attack patterns at every world you've taken. You're very consistent, Admiral." "Consistency is strength," Kethvar replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Consistency is predictability," Morrison corrected. "And predictability is vulnerability." Major Foster spoke for the first time since arriving. His voice was quiet but carried easily across the bridge. "How many humans do you think it takes to disable a Zephyrian warship?" The question seemed to confuse the aliens. Commander Hickstel answered first. "Hundreds, maybe thousands. Our ships are heavily defended." "One," Foster said simply. "If you know exactly where to strike." Dr. Carter nodded and changed the display. Again. This time it showed the cascade effect in detail. A single point of failure spreading through ship systems like a virus. "Your networked approach means that disrupting one ship affects all connected vessels," she explained. "The failure propagates through your communication links, your shared databases, your coordinated defense systems." "This is theoretical," Sub-Admiral Velthar protested. "You cannot actually implement such an attack." Morrison smiled slightly. "We don't need to implement it. We've already implemented it." "What do you mean?" "While we've been talking, our ship has been broadcasting a very specific signal. Your communication systems have been receiving and processing that signal for the past 20 minutes. Admiral Kethvar stood up quickly. "What kind of signal?" "A learning algorithm. It's been studying your network protocols, mapping your system connections, identifying the exact sequence needed to trigger a cascade failure." The Zephyrian commander rushed to the nearest console. "Bridge to engineering. Run a full diagnostic on all ship systems." "Systems appear normal, Admiral," came the reply. "All readings within acceptable parameters. Check the communication array. Look for any unusual signals or data packets." A pause. "Sir, we're detecting some irregular traffic in the network. It appears to be learning our protocols." Dr. Carter consulted her datapad. "The algorithm should be nearly complete by now. We estimate another 10 minutes before it has mapped your entire fleet network." "Shut down all external communications," Admiral Kethvar ordered. "Isolate our ships from each other." "We can't, sir. The communication network is integral to our tactical systems. If we shut it down, we lose coordination between ships." "And if we don't shut it down?" asked Velthar. Morrison answered. "Then in approximately 8 minutes we demonstrate why humans only needed one ship." The bridge erupted in activity as Zephyrian officers scrambled to understand the threat. Some demanded immediate attack on the human vessel. Others suggested retreat. Admiral Kethvar found himself caught between impossible choices. "You could destroy our ship," Morrison said calmly, watching the chaos around him. "But the algorithm is already in your network. It doesn't need the Defiant anymore." "What do you want?" Kethvar asked desperately. "We want you to leave our territory and never come back." "And if we refuse?" Major Foster stood up slowly. Despite being searched, despite being surrounded by enemies, he moved with the confidence of someone who held all the advantages. Then you'll discover what happens when humans solve problems permanently. Dr. Carter looked at her datapad. 6 minutes remaining. Admiral, Morrison said, your fleet is impressive. Your ships are well built. Your crews are professional. But you made one critical error. What error? You assumed that because we sent one ship we were weak. In reality, we sent one ship because that's all we needed. We studied you. We understood you. We found your weakness, and we exploited it. This is impossible. No single ship could defeat our entire fleet. You're right. No single ship could win a conventional battle against your fleet. But this isn't a conventional battle. This is a demonstration of why humans approach warfare differently than everyone else. Captain Morrison stood and straightened his uniform. We don't fight fair, Admiral. We fight smart. We don't match your strength with our strength. We find your weakness and we exploit it completely. 4 minutes, Dr. Carter announced. Admiral Cathvar looked around his bridge at the controlled panic of his officers. Everything he had believed about military superiority was crumbling. Numbers meant nothing if the enemy could turn your own systems against you. What happens in 4 minutes, he asked quietly. You find out why confident enemies are the most dangerous kind, Morrison replied. And why humans only needed to send one ship. The 3 humans returned to their ship as quietly as they had arrived. Admiral Cathvar watched the transport beam fade, leaving his bridge feeling strangely empty. The countdown continued in his mind. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. All ships prepare for immediate attack on the human vessel, he ordered desperately. Sir, interrupted Sub-Admiral Velthar, if what they said is true, attacking them might trigger the cascade, and if we do nothing it triggers anyway. On the UNS Defiant, Captain Morrison settled back into his command chair. The bridge was calm compared to the chaos they had left behind on the alien flagship. His crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Status report, Morrison said. Algorithm deployment complete, Dr. Carter announced from her science station. We have full network access to their entire fleet. All ship systems mapped and cataloged. Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks looked up from his console. Power systems. Ready. We can maintain the cascade effect for as long as needed. Commander Nicole Torres checked her weapons display. Targeting solutions locked in. We can hit any ship in their formation within 12 seconds. Lieutenant Amy Walsh monitored the alien fleet from her position. They're trying to break network connections between ships, but they can't do it without losing tactical coordination. Morrison nodded. Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship. The main screen flickered and showed Admiral Cathvar's bridge. The alien commander looked older than he had just minutes before. His officers moved frantically around him, trying to find solutions to an impossible problem. Admiral, Morrison said calmly, your time is up. Captain Morrison, please. We can negotiate. There must be some arrangement we can reach. The arrangement is simple. Withdraw from human space immediately. Take your fleet and leave. Never return. And if we refuse? Morrison turned to Commander Torres. Nicole, please demonstrate human problem-solving for our guests. Torres touched her console. Initiating. Demonstration. Target. Zephyrian Destroyer. Outer Ring. Grid reference 77 Alpha. On her screen, she selected one ship from the alien formation. It was a mid-sized vessel with a crew of about 300. Not the largest ship in the fleet, but not the smallest either. A perfect example. Activating Cascade Protocol. The effect started small. On the targeted destroyer, a minor fluctuation appeared in the power distribution network. Just a tiny irregularity that the ship's systems automatically tried to correct. But the correction triggered another irregularity. Then another. Within 30 seconds, the destroyer's main power grid began failing. Emergency lights came on as primary systems shut down. The ship's engines went offline. Weapons powered down. Life support switched to backup systems. Zephyrian destroyer Kethmore has lost main power, reported the sensor officer on the flagship. They're requesting assistance. But the cascade effect was just beginning. The destroyer's distress signals, sent through the fleet network, carried the algorithm to other ships. The automated systems that tried to help the disabled vessel became infected with the same systematic failure. One by one, ships began losing power. Cruiser Veldan reports engine failure. Battleship Carthex has lost weapon systems. Heavy destroyer Hixmek is dead in space. Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as his fleet began shutting down. Ship after ship went dark as the cascade spread through their networked systems. The very coordination that made them strong was destroying them. "How many ships have lost power?" he demanded. 17 so far, sir. The effect is spreading faster now. Can we stop it? Engineering reports negative. The failure is propagating through systems faster than we can isolate them. On the Defiant, Dr. Carter monitored the cascade with scientific fascination. The algorithm is learning their repair attempts and adapting to counter them. Every time they try to fix one system, it finds a new way to spread. "How long until the entire fleet is affected?" Morrison asked. "At current rate of propagation, approximately 9 minutes for complete fleet shutdown." Commander Torres added, "We can target specific ships to accelerate the process, or we can slow it down if they want to negotiate." Morrison opened the channel to the flagship again. Admiral Kethvar appeared on screen, his scaled face showing defeat and confusion. "Admiral, you now understand why we only sent one ship. This is impossible. Your vessel has no weapons capable of this." "You're correct. We're not using weapons, we're using your own systems against you. Every ship in your fleet is shutting itself down. 23 ships now offline," reported the Zephyrian sensor officer. "The cascade is accelerating." "Admiral," Morrison continued, "we can stop this process at any time. But we will only do so if you agree to our terms." "What terms?" "Complete withdrawal from human space. Immediate departure from this system. A guarantee that Zephyrian forces will never again threaten human colonies." Admiral Kethvar looked around his bridge. Half. His fleet was already disabled. The other half would follow soon. His officers stared at him, waiting for orders that could save them. "And if we agree to these terms, we restore power to your ships and allow you to leave peacefully. How do we know you won't attack us during withdrawal?" Morrison smiled slightly. "Admiral, if we wanted to destroy your fleet, we would have done so already. We're not interested in conquest or revenge. We simply want to solve the problem you created." Sub-Admiral Velthar stepped forward. "Sir, 31 ships are now offline. We need to make a decision." "Can we trust them?" Kethvar asked quietly. "Can we afford not to?" she replied. Chief Engineer Brooks reported from his station. "Fleet shut down now at 40%. We can halt the cascade whenever the captain gives the order." Morrison waited patiently. He could see the struggle on the alien commander's face. Admiral Kethvar had spent his career believing in the power of superior force. Now he was learning that superior intelligence could defeat any amount of firepower. 47 ships offline, the sensor officer announced. Cascade effect reaching critical mass. "Admiral," Morrison said gently, "you have perhaps 2 minutes before the shutdown becomes irreversible. After that point, we won't be able to restore your ships even if we wanted to." Kethvar closed his 6 eyes and made his decision. "I agree to your terms. Complete withdrawal from human space. We will depart immediately and never return." "Excellent choice," Morrison replied. "Dr. Carter, please halt the cascade and begin restoration procedures." "Understood. Stopping algorithm propagation. Now. Beginning power restoration sequence." Across the Zephyrian fleet, dead ships began coming back to life. Main power restored. Engines restarted. Weapons came online. Life. Support returned to normal. Within minutes, the entire fleet was operational again. "All ships report full functionality," the sensor officer announced with relief. Admiral Kethvar stared at the human captain on his screen. "You could have destroyed us completely." "Yes, we could have. But destruction wasn't the goal. The goal was to solve the problem. You were threatening our people, now you're not. Problem solved." "I don't understand. Why show mercy to an enemy?" Morrison's expression grew serious. "Because, Admiral, we want you to go back to your people and tell them what happened here. We want every species in the galaxy to understand what occurs when humans are threatened. And what is that? We don't send fleets to overwhelm our enemies. We don't rely on superior numbers or bigger weapons. We study the problem, find the perfect solution, and implement it with absolute precision. Dr. Carter looked up from her station. All Zephyrian ships are fully operational and ready for departure. Thank you, Dr. Carter. Morrison turned back to the screen. Admiral, you have 1 hour to clear human space. Safe travels. The transmission ended. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge, surrounded by fully functional systems and a crew that looked at him with new respect for human capabilities. All ships, he announced over the fleet communication system, prepare for immediate departure. We are withdrawing from human space. Sir, asked Sub-Admiral Velthar, what do we tell command about this defeat? Admiral Kethvar thought for a moment. We tell them the truth. The humans sent one ship because one ship was enough. And we make sure our people understand that humans are never to be underestimated again. The Zephyrian fleet moved away from New Haven like a tide retreating from shore. 200 warships that had arrived as conquerors now departed as a broken force, their confidence shattered by a single human vessel. Admiral Kethvar watched, the peaceful planet grow smaller on his main screen, but his mind remained fixed on the impossible events of the past few hours. Admiral? Sub-Admiral Velthar approached his command chair quietly. Fleet Command is requesting a full report. Of course they are. Kethvar turned away from the screen. What exactly do we tell them? That we were defeated by one ship? That 50 humans outsmarted 40,000 Zephyrians? That our entire military doctrine is fundamentally flawed? We tell them the truth, sir. The truth will end both our careers. Velthar moved closer, lowering her voice. Sir, with respect, our careers are meaningless compared to what we learned here. The humans didn't just defeat us. They taught us something about warfare that could change everything. Before Admiral Kethvar could respond, the communications officer called out, Sir, incoming transmission from the human vessel. Put it through. Captain Morrison appeared on the main screen once again. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiant looked exactly as it had before. Calm, organized, professional. No signs of celebration or triumph. The humans acted as if disabling an entire enemy fleet was simply another day's work. Admiral Kethvar, Morrison said politely, I wanted to speak with you before we part ways. What more is there to say, Captain? You have won. We are withdrawing. I wanted to answer the question you asked earlier. You wondered how we could be so certain that one ship would be enough. Kethvar leaned forward in his chair. Despite his defeat, he genuinely wanted to understand what had happened. Please explain. Morrison paused for a moment as if choosing his words carefully. Admiral, humans don't fight the enemy in front of us. We fight the enemy's entire approach to warfare. We study how you think, how you organize, how you plan. Then we find the one point where all those systems become vulnerable. But how could... You know our systems so well? Dr. Lisa Carter appeared beside Morrison on the screen. We've been studying Zephyrian military operations for over a year, Admiral. Not just your recent conquests, but your historical battles, your training methods, your technological development patterns. Every species approaches warfare differently, Morrison continued. Some rely on superior numbers, others depend on advanced weapons. Some use speed and mobility. The Zephyrians chose standardization and coordination. And that was our mistake? Not a mistake. A choice. Every choice has advantages and disadvantages. Your standardized approach allowed you to conquer 14 worlds with minimal losses. Very impressive. But Kethvar could hear the coming criticism. But it also meant that once someone understood your pattern, they could predict your weaknesses. Dr. Carter spent months studying your conquest of the Taylor system. She analyzed every ship movement, every communication protocol, every tactical decision. Dr. Carter nodded. The pattern was consistent across all your operations. Same formations, same procedures, same vulnerabilities. Once we mapped one Zephyrian fleet, we understood them all. Admiral Kethavar felt a chill run through his scaled body. How many other species have you studied this way? Every major military power in this region of space, Morrison replied matter-of-factly. The hegemony, the collective, the Free Worlds Alliance. We maintain detailed files on everyone's capabilities and weaknesses. In case you need to fight them. In case we need to solve problems they might create. Sub-Admiral Velthar spoke up, from beside the Admiral's chair. Captain Morrison, may I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you simply destroy our fleet? You clearly had the capability. Morrison's expression grew thoughtful. Because destruction doesn't solve the real problem, Sub-Admiral. If we had destroyed your fleet, the Zephyrian Empire would have sent another one, then another. The cycle would continue until one side was completely defeated. And this way, you return to your people with knowledge. You tell them, what happened here? You explain that humans can defeat any conventional force without firing a shot. The word spreads. Other potential enemies reconsider their plans. Dr. Carter added, We prefer reputation to warfare, Admiral. It's much more efficient. You want other species to be afraid of humans? We want other species to be smart enough not to threaten us, Morrison corrected. Fear leads to desperate actions. Respect leads to peaceful coexistence. Admiral Kethavar considered this. In his 40 years of military service, he had never encountered this approach to warfare. Most species either tried to intimidate their enemies or destroy them completely. The humans were doing something entirely different. Captain, what happens now? Do you expect us to never expand our territory again? Admiral, you can expand wherever you like. You can conquer any world that doesn't belong to humanity or our allies, but you now know what happens if you threaten human space. And who are your allies? Morrison smiled slightly. Anyone who prefers cooperation to conquest. Anyone who chooses trade over war. Anyone who solves problems through negotiation rather than force. We could return with a larger fleet, Kethavar said, though his voice lacked conviction. You could. But now you know it wouldn't matter. Numbers don't solve the fundamental problem. We would simply study your new approach and find new weaknesses to exploit. So we can never defeat humanity? Admiral, you're thinking about this wrong. The question isn't whether you can defeat humanity. The question is why you would want to. Dr. Carter leaned forward. Your people are excellent engineers and organizers. You've built an impressive civilization. Why not focus on growth through cooperation instead of conquest? Because conquest is what we know, Velthar said quietly. Then perhaps it's time to learn something new, Morrison suggested. Humans went through the same process centuries ago. We learned that cooperation is more profitable than conquest in the long run. Admiral Kethavar looked around his bridge at his officers. They were listening to this conversation with obvious interest. Many of them were young, part of a generation that had known only military expansion. Captain Morrison, what would you recommend for the Zephyrian Empire? Find problems that need solving and solve them. Use your organizational skills to build things instead of destroying them. Offer your services to other species who need help with large projects. Trade your expertise for resources and knowledge. And, if other species threaten us, then you call your allies for help. But first, you make sure you have allies worth calling. The conversation continued for several more minutes, covering topics from trade agreements to mutual defense pacts. Admiral Kethavar found himself genuinely considering the possibilities. Perhaps there was another way forward for his people. Finally, Captain Morrison prepared to end the transmission. Admiral, you have a choice to make. You can return to your people and report a military defeat, or you can return with the beginnings of a new strategy for Zephyrian expansion. What kind of strategy? The kind that doesn't require conquering anyone. The kind that makes other species want to work with you instead of fear you. After the transmission ended, Admiral Kethavar sat in silence for several minutes. His officers waited patiently for orders. Finally, he turned to his communications officer. Send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we need to schedule a strategic review of our expansion policies. Yes, sir. And the report on this operation? Tell them we encountered a superior force and withdrew to avoid unnecessary casualties. Tell them we need to study human capabilities before any future operations in this region. Is that all, sir? Admiral Kethvar looked at the stars ahead of them. No. Tell them I'm recommending we open diplomatic channels with the human government. It's time the Zephyrian Empire learned some new approaches to galactic relations. As the Zephyrian fleet continued its journey home, Admiral Kethvar began composing a very different kind of report than he had originally planned. Instead of describing a humiliating defeat, he would present an opportunity. The humans had shown them something new, a way to achieve their goals without endless warfare. Behind them, the UNS Defiant remained on station near New Haven, its crew, already analyzing data from their encounter. Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks was documenting the Cascade algorithm for future reference. Commander Nicole Torres was updating tactical files on Zephyrian capabilities. Dr. Lisa Carter was preparing reports for command about the psychological aspects of the confrontation. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the alien fleet disappear into the distance. Lieutenant Amy Walsh approached him with a datapad. "Sir, message from Colonial Command. They want to know if we need reinforcements." Morrison shook his head. "Send reply. Problem resolved. No additional forces required." "That's all?" "That's all. The Zephyrians understand now. Word will spread. To other potential threats, our reputation will do the rest." As the UNS Defiant prepared to return to its patrol route, Captain Morrison reflected on the day's events. One ship had been enough. It always was, when humans approached problems the right way. Study the enemy, understand their weaknesses, find the perfect solution, and implement it with precision. It was a lesson the galaxy was still learning, but they would learn it, one encounter at a time, and hopefully, each unnecessary.